President Trump's rally in Cincinnati, Ohio last night was his 8th campaign stop this year. He had a pretty big crowd. The first since a racist chant of "Send her back" broke out in North Carolina 2 weeks ago. We all remember that. The president avoided mentioning the 4 minority female Democratic lawmakers by name, but continued his week-long attack on America's cities.
It's been total one-party control of the inner cities. For 100 years, it's been one-party control, and look at them. We can name one after another, but I won't do that, because I don't want to be controversial. Look at Los Angeles with the tents and the horrible, horrible, disgusting conditions. Look at San Francisco. Look at some of your other cities. The homicide rate in Baltimore is significantly higher than El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala. I believe it's higher than, give me a place that you think is pretty bad. Give me a place. The guy says Afghanistan. I believe it's higher than Afghanistan. In our country, think of that.
So, Donnie, while he didn't, he's gone from attacking individual members of Congress who are people of color to now attacking entire cities. He attacked San Francisco last night. He attacked Baltimore last night. He's attacking cities where he knows he's not going to get any votes. And dividing come on, let's just stop. I mean, I hope nobody is suggesting that Donald Trump's doing anything other than telling that largely white crowd in Cincinnati, it's us against them. I will attack people of color who run cities, who run urban centers that are predominantly black, and it is an us against them. We, of course, are lily white. They, of course, live in rat-infested, crime-infested parts of America.
Yeah, Joe, look, he can choose. It can be 4 congresswomen. It could be S-hole countries. It can be cities. Any metaphor, any symbol you have for people of color, he will use. Speaking of color, just a light moment for a second. We normalize all his horrific behavior, whether it's chants. We also normalize the way he looks. Did you see this color of this? His hair has gone to glow-in-the-dark yellow. I don't know what's going on there. It's particularly flat and particularly yellow. To me, I think some of his colorist, we got to get on that. So I know it's not an important issue, but I know for Donald it is. But, Joe, I want to pick up where you started last hour, because with all of his heinousness, he did bring up 2 smart points last night. And Jonathan Lemire pointed this out in the first hour. He pointed out that the Democrats are going after Obama instead of himself. And he also pointed out they're out of touch with the mainstream. And that, to me, is the big takeaway, that if the Democrats can't get the message from their consultants, if they can't get message from pollsters, if they can't get message from folks like you and folks on this air about that the enemy is Donald Trump, not Barack Obama, we need to refocus them. And one quick branding lesson. I want to bring up Ronald Reagan and Michael Jordan. What the Republicans have done for decades, they understood they had a base brand to build off of, Ronald Reagan, and they lionized him year after year. That's a base brand. Nike has understood that Michael Jordan and Air Jordans are the base brand, and even when they come out with a new sneaker, they build on that success. They don't destroy it. So message to Democrats, the enemy is not Obama, it's Donald J. Trump. You saw him on stage last night.
And the base brand right now is Barack Obama because of the Affordable Care Act, because at the end of the day, he is the only Democrat to receive a majority of America's votes in a presidential race since Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He also has a 95% approval rating inside the Democratic Party. 83% of Democrats support the Affordable Care Act. The majority of Americans support now the Affordable Care Act. So build on that base brand. You're exactly right. And as I've been saying on this show for months now, when it comes to Obamacare, mend it, don't end it. Jonathan Lemire, so it's very interesting. We keep wondering how low Donald Trump can go. We said it during the campaign. We said it after his carnage speech. We said it after Charlottesville. And we kept saying this is as low Donald Trump can go. Well, you and I think it was Zeke Miller with the Associated Press reported that actually people that have been concerned by Donald Trump's management style, both inside and outside of the White House, have actually noted over the past 2 weeks that if it's possible, he's become even more mercurial, and that his management style has become even more dangerously erratic.
Well, Joe, what we've seen here is the utter disappearance of any sort of guardrails around him. In the first year or so of his term, there were the grown-ups in the room, whether it was Defense Secretary Mattis or National Security Advisor McMaster or even Secretary of State Rex Tillerson for a time, who would try to keep the president on track, try to keep, push back, on some of his sort of more out there directives or just ignore them altogether, which is what something that Mattis would do time after time. And those people have faded away. And then the retirement of D&I Coates, his stepping away is the sort of the latest example of that, where on the foreign policy side, there are very few people out there who are willing to say no to this president. But we're also seeing it in his campaign. We're seeing it in his domestic policies. We're seeing it as he really gears up for re-election. His campaign is being managed by Brad Parscale, who was involved in 2016 as well, who was very, very close to Jared Kushner. I mean, it's going to be a family affair again. Jared Kushner, Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, his wife Laura Trump, they're going to be running it. Those are people who are not going to push back on the president when he wants to escalate certain issues. And let's be clear. The fact that he did not incite the send her back chants last night does not negate the racist comments and tweets that he has issued time and time again over the last couple of weeks. He happened just to be more disciplined for one evening in Cincinnati. That could all change again on Twitter at any time. And he has told people around him that he thinks these attacks on the Congresswoman of color are very effective. He thinks that's a good wedge issue for him, but also about Congressman Cummings. And there was pushback in the White House. There's real concern in the White House about where he was going with that, attacking Cummings, who's well respected on Capitol Hill, painting entire American cities as being, crime infested and hellholes. But no one there challenged him. And the president afterwards, when he went into a senior staff meeting, he asked how he thought those tweets played on television. He did not ask for their permission to do it again or whether he thought they were a good idea. He is going to keep doing what he wants to do with very little resistance inside the White House or at large within the Republican Party.
Well, and he believes, I think wrongly, but he believes that he can run the 2020 campaign the way he ran parts of the 2016 campaign. But as the New York Times wrote earlier this week, can do it with just racism that's out in the open, even more openly racist than George Wallace was in his 1968 or 1972 campaigns, where Wallace would talk about pointy-headed bureaucrats, or he'd talk about the elites, or he would talk in these generalities. But here you have Donald Trump, who's specifically attacking people of color and telling them to go back to where they came from.
Yeah, and I am less comforted than you maybe that this is not going to be effective. I actually think it will be effective for the following reason. I think if we step back and you think about what are some of the big themes about what's going on in this country that you talk about in the show all the time, I would say the inequality, plutocracy, rich people gaming the system for themselves, whether that's Donald Trump or Jeffrey Epstein or others, or Silicon Valley. And I think the other one is the big identity transition in American life, the racial identity transition, the gender identity transition. And if the dominant conversation in America is about economics, plutocracy, inequality, America not working for people, that is a bad conversation for Donald Trump because he embodies that problem. If he can, through chants, through tweets, through these dog whistles, through actually just normal whistles, make the conversation we are having the identity conversation, make the explicit conversation about race, about gender, about people who want to stay on top, fearing that they're losing ground. If he can make us have that conversation, I think he is in a way more favorable environment. It is not a good Republican strategy for 20 years to be the party of white resentment and male resentment, but I think it's a good short-term strategy for maybe one more go, and he is determined to have that be his ploy.
Well, and Anna, that's a great way to put it. And Mika, that is the question that America's history hangs in the balance for the next 4 years. Whether this can work for one more go because this demographics show you that the next 30 years are going to be shaped not by the electorate in 2016, but by Obama's 2008 coalition of the ascendant. You have white Americans who are getting older. The average age of the white American is in the, I think, the 50s. The average age of non-white Americans are in the, I believe, the late 20s. And you just look at all the demographics, and they line up in such a way that, again, we know how this ends in 2024. The question is whether Donald Trump and white resentment will have their final curtain call from 2020 to 2024. And that's why this moment is so critically important. And perhaps it's why Donald Trump's thinking he can run out the clock and maybe get elected by pushing these racial resentments towards a white America who just 30 years ago was 75% of the population, and in the next 30 years will actually be a minority.
Well, and some think this is a race for, quite frankly, his future and what he might be facing if he leaves the White House.
Are you saying
term.
A second term or a jail term?
Second term or a jail term, facing the Southern District on a host of issues that he would be facing the moment he walked out of the White House. You know, I think Democrats need to look at Donald Trump as a man with nothing to lose, because walking out of that White House after a first term, there are many who believe is walking right into jail.
Well, you know, and Robert Mueller, we can talk about Robert Mueller, and, you know, we had said the day before the rally, not to the day before Robert Mueller's speech before Congress, his testimony before Congress, not to expect much from that, said we were expecting nothing from that. I will say one of the most shocking answers came when Robert Mueller was willing to say
to a Republican,
that Donald J. Trump, could face an indictment for obstruction of justice the day he walks out of the White House. And if everybody doesn't think that Trump did not hear that,
no, he heard that,
and will not be motivated by that over the next year and a half, they don't understand Donald Trump.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.